Did you know that iron deficiency is one of the most common, yet often overlooked nutritional gaps affecting 1 in 3 adults, especially women? I'm a lifelong vegetarian, and so getting enough iron has been a constant struggle. There are plenty of times when I tried to give blood and I couldn't because my iron was too low, especially in my 20s when my diet consisted of mostly pasta. So I have had to take iron supplements at various times in my life. So when Citterall from Pharmanutra wanted to advertise with us, it was a no-brainer. It's a premium iron supplement powered by patented sucrosomial technology, which helps your body absorb 3 to 4 times more iron while avoiding the common side effects of traditional iron supplements like nausea and constipation. It's vegan and gluten-free and 100% allergen-free and free from artificial colorants. So if you feel like no matter how much you rest, you're still running on empty, you're not alone. Over 2 million people have already discovered Citterall, and it could be the support you've been looking for. So head to pharmanutra-us.com and use code ATTWG for 10% off your first order of Citterall. That's PHARMANUTRA-US.com, promo code ATTWG for 10% off today. Have you ever had a gut feeling about someone and ignored it? In the thriller Ask for Andrea by Noelle W. Eiley, that feeling could be the difference between life and death, and it may also be a message from the other side. So Ethan read this book even before I did and has a lot to say about it.
Cover to cover, I could not put this book down. It is such a page turner. It is an intense read. It takes you from one point of view to another and culminates in a very intense finish that keeps you on the edge the entire time.
So basically, it's 3 women were murdered by the same man, and they unite in the afterlife to stop him from killing again in a domestic thriller that meets The Lovely Bones. If you've ever screamed at a true crime doc, why didn't anyone listen?
This is the book to read for that.
Ask for Andrea by Noelle Eiley. The holidays sneak up on you fast, and I feel like every year it is harder and harder to find really cool gifts for the people in my life. But Uncommon Goods makes holiday shopping stress-free and joyful with thousands of one-of-a-kind gifts that you can't find anywhere else. Uncommon Goods has something for everyone, and they live up to their name. They're selling products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the US, and many are crafted by independent artists and small businesses. I was just on there, and they have a whole section of advent calendars. And I'm not just talking like the chocolate ones or anything like that. These are really cool ones. They have charm bracelet advent calendars. They even have a puzzle advent calendar, and I know some people who would love that one. At Uncommon Goods, you'll find thousands of new gift ideas that you just won't find anywhere else, no matter how much endless scrolling you do. So shop early, have fun, and cross some names off your list today. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/ATTWG. That's uncommongoods.com/ATTWG for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary. Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is November 6th. On this day in 1980, just days after the presidential election, 44-year-old campaign worker Nancy Marleine Snow vanished in the Annapolis, Baltimore area. While her last movements are up for debate, what everyone agrees on is that Nancy came back to Maryland right after Election Day, and just a few days later, she was gone. Today, we're discussing the unsolved disappearance of Nancy Snow. Let's get started. Nancy Snow lived a fascinating life. She was a linguist who is fluent in several languages, a former talk show host in California, and by 1980, she was a well-connected political fundraiser based in downtown Annapolis, Maryland. Her 3 teenage daughters lived in California with their father, but Nancy stayed in close touch, calling almost every day and visiting often. and she never missed any birthdays or milestones. In the fall of 1980, she'd been in St. Louis working on Jean McNary's U.S. Senate campaign. After the election on November 4th, she flew home to Maryland, ready, it seemed, to unwind after a busy political season. That night, she attended an election party in Baltimore. The next morning, she had breakfast with the host. Then, a man who had been house-sitting for her, Paul T. Collins III, picked her up from the hotel. According to Dateline's Missing in America investigation, that was the last confirmed time that anyone from her close circle saw her alive. When Nancy stopped calling her daughters, they immediately knew that something was wrong. Years later, the Washington Post reported that her oldest daughter realized it during her own mid-November birthday, when she turned 16 and no card, call, or gift arrived. That, of course, was completely out of character for their mother. Now, from this point forward, the timeline depends largely on one person's story, Paul Collins. Collins later told police that after he brought Nancy home to Annapolis, she went out for a drink at McGarvey's, a well-known downtown pub. He claimed that she met a man there who called himself Captain J, who offered her short-term work crewing a yacht from Fort Lauderdale to the Bahamas. Collins said that Nancy packed a bag, took $1,000 in cash, and early in the morning on November 8th, he walked her to a nearby intersection where she got into a white van with other people. The FBI's 2007 VICAP bulletin listed that version of events as the last reported sighting of Nancy Snow. But we're using the November 6th date because that was the last independent sighting of Nancy by somebody other than Collins. And we use that date because investigators have never been able to verify any part of Collins' story. They found no record of a Captain J, no corresponding boat, and no sign of Nancy's passport being used again. In fact, according to her daughters, her passport was expired at the time. And that's something that obviously cast serious doubt on the idea that she suddenly left the country to work on a yacht without even so much as giving her daughters a phone call. Months passed before an official missing person report was even filed. By February 1981, Nancy's oldest daughter, Stacy, had taken matters into her own hands. She and Collins traveled to Fort Lauderdale hoping to find Nancy or this supposed boat crew. While there, Collins filed the first missing persons report, and Stacy handed out photos of her mother. But nothing came of it. Back home in Maryland, the Annapolis Police Department still didn't have a report on file. According to later reporting, it wasn't until April 1981 when Stacy returned and realized that no one in Maryland had formally documented her mother's disappearance. It was only then that Collins filed a second report. That delay became a central issue when detectives reviewed the case years later. By 2005, Nancy's case was one of Annapolis's oldest active homicide investigations. Retired state's attorney Dave Cordell told the Washington Post that Collins, quote, might be considered a person of interest, end quote, though he has never been charged. Detectives also confirmed that they have never found any evidence of Captain J or the yacht described in Collins' story. According to later reporting from Oxygen.com, Nancy was declared legally dead in 1988, and the case was reclassified as a homicide in 1989. Investigators believe that whatever happened to her most likely occurred soon after she returned to Annapolis, possibly within a day or two of being picked up from that hotel. But in 2010, a new tip gave detectives hope and a name. The Cotton Blossom, a 55-foot sailboat once docked at Petrini Shipyard in Annapolis around the same time Nancy disappeared. According to a report in the Washington Examiner, a man, quote, suspected in the death of Snow, end quote, met with detectives in late 2009. Prosecutors offered him limited immunity if he could lead them to her remains. He declined. That same article also reiterated what police have said for years. that Collins was the last known person to see Nancy alive. Despite the renewed efforts, the lead went cold. There was no body, no charges, and no closure. More than 4 decades after Nancy vanished, her story reached a national audience again. In 2025, Dateline Missing in America devoted an episode to her case, interviewing Nancy's 3 daughters, Justine, Kimberly, and Stacy, alongside Corporal William Noel from the Annapolis Police Department and retired investigator David Cordell. The episode reconstructed the now well-documented timeline: the flight from St. Louis, the election party, breakfast the next morning, and Collins picking her up from the hotel. It also revealed that checks were written from Nancy's account after she disappeared, something that Collins told police he did with permission while house-sitting. To this day, he has never been charged in connection with Nancy's disappearance. Through all of it, Nancy's daughters have refused to let her story fade. They've given DNA samples, pressed for renewed investigations, and shared their mother's story whenever someone would listen. When the Washington Post profiled them in 2005, they spoke about living for years in limbo, balancing hope with heartbreak. And when Dateline returned to the story in 2025, they did the same, holding space both for grief and determination, reminding the public that someone out there still knows what happened on November 6, 1980. Nancy Snow was a loving mother who was looking forward to resting and enjoying her new apartment after a busy campaign season. But within days of returning to Annapolis, she disappeared. The story that followed, a captain, a boat, a cash withdrawal, it never added up. And so, now, more than 40 years later, investigators still call it what it is: an open homicide case with unanswered questions. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found Nancy's story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe, and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!